Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Profit Toolbelt podcast. This is just for construction and contracting business owners, those of you that are curious to find ways to work smarter, not just harder. And today we've got a really special treat. But first, my name is Dominic Rubino, and I'll be your host. Today's guest is Cian Brennan. Cian is going to talk to us today about how to avoid signing high-risk contracts, boost our cash flow, and our profits. That should be very interesting. You want to stay away from those high-risk contracts. And when we're signing somebody else's paper, it's almost guaranteed to be a high-risk contract. Hey, first, what's this podcast all about? Well, I show contractors how to get back in control of their construction business, even if they don't know where to start. See, the truth is you don't need a lot of extra time or a business degree to build a profitable, solid construction business. You need simple systems and some new ideas to old problems. Simple systems that give you quiet confidence. Now, for too long, our industry's been keeping secrets, acting as if we're the only ones who have a secret sauce on building a profitable construction business. Well, I'm here to put an end to that. On this show, you're going to learn how to use simple systems in 3 places: in the office, on a job site, and in your shop. And if there was a 4th bonus place that I show people simple systems, it's all about the mindset of success and business ownership. Getting your business to the next level starts in your head, just like it starts in mine. I'm a business owner, and I'm also a business coach. The only people I work with are construction and contracting business owners who want to get to the next level in their business. On this show, I'm going to share those simple systems so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to get that bad boy rolling. So if you're a business owner who's curious to find ways to run your business profitably, to have more time off, to do the things you love, to build a team you can rely on, and grow a company that one day you could sell or pass on to somebody else or live off the cash flow, then you're in the right place. And you know who else is listening to this show? Other contractors who are in family businesses, who have partnerships, or who are running the business on their own, really without anybody to turn to. Now, I host this podcast because one day I want to be your business coach. As a matter of fact, I have a team of business coaches that I have personally hand selected. I have very high expectations for the people that join my team, and I'm proud of every single one of them. Now, as you listen to this podcast, ask yourself if you think me and my team might be the right tool to help you get to the next level. With that being said, let me get into business coach mode right now. I'm going to challenge you. In this episode today, you're going to hear something, learn something, or realize something. And on that, I want you to take action in the next 24 hours, and then I want you to pay attention to how that improves your business or your life. I hope you know that this podcast is built to educate, inform, and inspire you. So let me get in your head and ask you an inspirational question. Are you happy being a contractor who runs a few crews, or do you want to be a business person who just happens to run a construction company? By the end of today's episode, you're going to know the answer. Let's get to it. Mr. Cian Brennan, how the heck are you?
Very good, Dominic. How are you?
I'm good. It's nice to be back on with you.
It is indeed.
Yeah, I have microphone envy. Just so you know, you've got a Rode mic, and I've got a Yeti, a Blue Yeti.
It is a good mic. I like it, except that it's just a totally advertising road here. So I'm going to get a sticker here. It's changing something a bit better.
Yeah, maybe your company or something like that.
Yeah, that's the plan.
But I'm glad to have you here because we get to talk a little bit more about the commercial construction side, of which you're an expert, I would say.
I try my best.
Try my best. Yeah. Hey, why don't I do this? So, because I've met you and I know you, but why don't I put it in your hands? I'm going to ask you a very abrupt question.
Sure. Go for it.
Cian Brennan, who the heck are you? And how is it you come to be speaking to all these contractors and construction business owners all over the world?
Okay. Well, I come from a family of construction people. My grandfather owned a construction company in the west of Ireland, in a place called Galway. And when I was growing up, when he died, newspapers said the man who built Galway. He built loads of stuff around Galway, very successful construction company. And when he was older, he passed it on to his son, who had a different way of doing business than he did, and the company went out of business. And so to this day in that area, there was a hotel, then a restaurant called Brennan's Yard. So Brennan is my second name, and the yard was where he had his building yard. So the advice to me was, don't get into contracting. Go owners side, go onto the owners. And so I did that. I went to university, got a degree, a master's, and ended up working. I had a big passion for adventure. And so I traveled to Australia and went into oil and gas construction of massive oil and gas plants. And I ended up in the Pilbara, which is like the middle of nowhere in Australia, like all with Chevron and all these big oil and gas companies. Then moved to the Middle East. So I worked in Saudi Arabia, I worked in Qatar, I worked in Iraq. And during that time, essentially, it was my job to develop strategies on how to save money with contractors with the contracts. And so I was the guy who was designing the strategies for these big companies, essentially on how not to pay you, on how to reduce risk.
And the truth comes out, right? but really, I mean, you were doing contract management inside the big companies,
I mean,
right?
it is, and it's all perspective. Obviously they feel that subcontractors are taking advantage. They don't want to be taken advantage. They want to pay more than what they should. And so it's just making sure that all your ducks are in a row. But over that time, I was seeing subcontractors, contractors going out of business left, right, and center, people losing money. And it was eventually because they didn't know how the insides of these big companies or bigger companies are working. And so they couldn't get it right. They couldn't play the game. They lost money. They went out of business. They signed terrible contracts. And I've eventually felt that my granddad would not be happy with what I'd be doing. I'm putting companies like his out of business. And so that's when 2019, I started Quantum. And it's been an adventure since.
Well, and you love adventure. So an Irish guy ends up in Australia and you're still there. What's that adventure?
Yeah, so I met an Australian woman. I've got two kids, and still travel. The businesses in the US, in New Zealand, Australia, Canada. So I travel a lot, but absolutely love it.
Yeah, such a cool background. It's very unique as well. We hear lots about working in the Middle East, and you've actually done it. Oil and gas is its own world, but you also dealt with all of the construction trades that, because it's, the oil and gas is not just pump jacks taking oil out of the ground. There's more to it.
Obviously you're building plants, you're building buildings, you're building roads, you're building everything basically. They build small communities,
residences.
Yeah, exactly.
Middle of nowhere. Of nowhere. Yeah. So today I invited you on because your expertise is around all everything to do with the world of contracts. But our topic that you and I landed on is this: how to avoid signing high risk contracts, boost my cash flow and margins on my projects. You think we've got people's attention?
I hope so. They're very important things. They're ultimately, those three things are arguably the most important thing in construction. If you got those three things right, you can get a lot of other stuff wrong and still get by.
Yeah.
But if you get these three things wrong, you're putting yourself into very big trouble.
Yeah. I'm going to expose my throat. I'm going to tell you things I've heard from other commercial contractors, and maybe you've heard them too. But I'm going to start that way so that we can enter into the conversation, because people listening to the show are already saying things that I've heard or experienced. Look, there's only a couple of big, decent contractors in my city. I don't want to anger them. And so they hand me a contract and I sign it. Things have worked out well so far, right? And if I don't sign it, they're going to go to the next guy. That's one that I hear a lot. Dom, we have to take what we're given, because if we don't, they're just going to move on to the next guy. Maybe I'll just start there and let you develop the thought here around that. How do I build my business when that's the case?
So ultimately, the biggest and best construction companies have armies of contract people, and they do it for a reason, because risk in construction is incredibly important. Over the course of 5, 10, 15, 20 years, something is going to happen to your company. Some issue is going to happen. And so here's the difference. Keith Cunningham, the guy who writes a book called The Road Less Stupid, talks about. He goes, if you could unwind, and you ask, as a listener, ask yourself this question: if you could unwind 3 financial decisions that you've made in your business since you started, how much bigger or how much more money would you have as a company?
Wow.
And obviously, it is a lot. And the thing is, the success in construction is not necessarily about big wins. It's actually being more defensive. It's about smaller losses, because there's going to be losses. So if you're growing as a construction company over time, if you're the type of company that when something happens, it sets you back 5 years because the thing that happened is so big, or puts you out of business. What happens most construction companies. But what we want to have happen is when something bad happens, it's just a little blip, and then you continue to go.
You can
And
survive.
that's how over time. And that's why all of these large construction companies have armies of contracts and lawyers and stuff. They do it for that reason. So that's the reason why. Now, so many companies come to us with the same perspective. There's only so many larger companies in my town, and I don't want to piss them off. And so, having worked in those companies, I can tell you categorically that isn't true.
Oh,
primarily, the most important thing for them is when they're looking at a bids that are coming in, or a potential person they're looking to deal with. Their number one focus is getting the work done. Can they get the work done? Yes or no? And then the second is price. Are they technically qualified? And then price. So getting technically qualified is the most important thing. And how that unravels is when you don't try to negotiate your construction contract, they look at you as if you don't know what you're doing.
Oh, really?
And to give you an example, there's a noise wall contractor that we were dealing with years ago. A noise wall are the walls on either side of a highway or freeway to kind of soundproof it. And he had 2 different projects he was going for. And one, he knew the person, and the other one was a brand new company. And I was saying, look, we got to try and negotiate your contracts. He was saying that very same thing that you were saying. I don't want to negotiate. I don't appear to be too contractual. And so I go, right, well, you take the guy that you know and go ahead and just sign that contract or do whatever it is. And let me take the guy that you don't know. And so what we did was we took the contract, and then we went through the contract and we prepared departures from the contract, or clarifications from the contract, basically suggesting changes. And we sent it back to them. And the response was, well, first of all, they won their project, but the response was, thank you for your departures. It gave us confidence that you knew what you were doing, because we didn't know who you guys were. And that's what happens all the time. And if
because
on
you
their
gave intelligent comments, right? You gave intelligent, not knee jerk, like we're not signing this. They were intelligent, thoughtful suggestions.
Exactly. And it's how you approach it as well. If you get a lawyer to go run through your contract, and then you give them 30, 40 of these comments, and half of them you don't even really care about, versus if you give them 10 of ones that are quite important to you, and you explain why they don't actually work for you and why you want to change them, then you look like you know exactly what you're doing, and you're basically switched on.
Can I take a little sidetrack here?
Sure.
Lawyers. So I'll give you my definition of a lawyer, and I don't mean to offend any lawyers out there. And Carolyn Crow means, if you're listening, we're not taking shots here. This is just my definition. So a lawyer is there. I hire a lawyer to remove risk. And so a lawyer is very good at removing all risk, and they just want to remove risk, to the point that they're happy to not sign a contract unless it's completely, risk-free or risk on my side. But that doesn't move business forward. There's no give and take. They tend to, at least what I've seen, is first they want to bill me. So they want to do a very thorough job on looking for every single risk. And so they're going to come up with a list of where it could be 10 points, like you said. They're going to have 60 suggestions, very smart, wise suggestions. And I'm going to get billed for that. But they're not suggestions that need to be taken, or suggestions that are going to move the deal forward. They could all be deal breakers. They don't care. They just put them all down. That's my take on lawyers.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. I would agree with that. And also, a lot of times, even construction lawyers don't understand the ins and outs of construction. Like a construction lawyer typically has not spent a lot of time on site. And so when we're looking at the things that we're trying to negotiate, we're looking at, does that actually make a difference? Does this actually cause any risk or not? A lot of times it doesn't. And there's 4 or 5 things that if you don't negotiate in, they're literally will make a huge difference.
Well, now everybody's listening very carefully for your list of 4 or 5 things.
Yeah. we can circle back. But there's the ones that make a huge difference, and if you don't get those ones out, that's what can lose you money and put you out of business. So from an overall strategy, if our goal is to only get those main things out of the contract that are negotiated in our favor, how do we approach it? We don't approach it like basically trying to get 20 things out that don't really matter. We just go for the ones that we actually want. And then from their side, you look professional, you look like you know what you're doing, you look like you're a proper big company that has done these type of projects before. You've got reasons why you don't want to negotiate, and ultimately you end up winning more projects because of that.
Can you do this with somebody you've already been, people listening to the show are already doing a couple $1 million a year. They're commercial contractors, they're, whatever their trade is. They've already got GCs they've been working with. And, they'll say, well, I've already got a relationship with that guy.
Yep. Can
you still do this with existing relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. It's how you approach it. It's how you skin the cat, essentially. Like if you go combative to people, then people will be combative back. If you go to a guy and you're saying, look, we've been taking on a lot of risk in the last while, and we've grown as a company and we got a little bit more sophisticated, and there's just a few things that we want to negotiate in this contract, just to make sure that we're compliant with our insurance, and just to make sure we're compliant with our own commercial principles.
Nice. And then let me take that one step further. Who do I negotiate that with? The person who's managing the construction contract is managing all sorts of construction contracts. They don't care. They're going to buy painting services from you and tiling services from another guy and millwork services from somebody else. So they're not necessarily an expert in any of those things, right? They're also negotiating the pool maintenance contract for the hot tub that's going into the complex that's being built. So who do I negotiate with? The purchasing person?
Yes, typically it's the purchasing person. So typically on their side, it depends if they're trying to get all of these sorted at one time. There's one person who is its job to do these competitive bids. It's his job to find someone to do this particular work. He's kind of like the guy he's kind of the bottleneck, let's say. So everything goes through him. On his side, when you send, this is actually a really important point, when you send your departures or your clarifications or whatever to him, he's like, it comes into him, and then on his side, he's almost like an entrepreneur inside that business, right? He manages all of these different people. So it comes into him, and then he gives the contract stuff to the contracts guy or the lawyer. He gives the technical stuff to the engineer or the person, and he gives it whatever. He gets their comments, collates it, and then goes back. And that's kind of typically how it works. So when you send it to him, again, if you make it really easy for him and explain everything in your document to that person, he's just going to go, yeah, fine.
Done.
Couldn't be done.
Yeah.
If you make it really complex and difficult, he's going to have to throw it over to the lawyer. The lawyer's going to have to come back with their complex and difficult comments. And that's what starts it.
So much of this is knowing who's who in the zoo and what they care about. So that people are clear, because they might already have this person as a contact that they know. There's certain contracting companies you've done business with for years. What's the title of that person typically? What role?
Typically a contracts administrator, procurement manager, procurement person. That's typically who it is.
And it might not be the PM that's assigning you this job or starting to send you POs saying, let's get going.
And no, a lot of times it's not the PO, but sometimes it is the PO. In which case, when you do, sorry, sometimes it is the PM, and when it is the PMs are actually pretty easy to deal with. You can just get them on a phone call and walk them through and tell them hey, look, here's the reason that this doesn't make sense. Give you an example. If you're a scaffolding company and they're trying to hold a retainer or a retention of 10% on a project, which is normal for other trades, right? Because in case something happens, they want to rectify the defects. And if you say to him, this makes absolutely no sense to me, right? And he's like, what do you mean? It's like, well, the whole point of holding the security is to, in case something goes wrong during the 12-month period after the contract, that you can rectify it. But all our equipment is gone on the day we leave. Therefore, having a defects liability period or a warranty period where you're holding 10% of my cash behind and for a year.
You're talking about the scaffolding rental company, the scaffolding erection company. I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. So that's just an example of where stuff doesn't make sense, and you can just have a candid conversation. And so the game is, and again, I've been on their side. The game is they give you, and can I curse on this? No, I can't.
No,
the game is they give you.
I'm glad. Thank you for asking. Yeah,
they give you their worst contract, the riskiest contract. That is the contract that you receive, fully expecting you to negotiate. All the other companies, all the other bigger companies are negotiating. This is the game. I promise, having been on that side. And so for each clause or each section in that contract, there are backups. And so you go, I don't agree to this, I don't agree to this. They go to their little list. Okay, it doesn't agree to that one. What's the next step down? Okay, we'll go with this one. And then they have backups for every single one. So they just play that game, and that's it. If you know how to play the game, then you can play. They're expecting you to negotiate. If you don't negotiate, it's almost like just, oh, wow, that's almost a red flag.
A red flag that you're not a sophisticated provider.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't be able to do the same thing with your employees or other subs that you might be doing buyouts on, or et cetera.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're signing this contract, that's a you don't know the type of risk that you're taking on.
Yeah, I've worked with general contractors, maybe definitely not the same level as you, but I've been in the office when they said our only script is to come back, no matter what you bid, we say you're high. You're one of the highest too, and that's all our only script. And then you guys all run away and come back with a new price because we already like what are you doing every single time? We know that. And so that their only script they have to have is go a little high.
Yeah. And look, with GCs, stuff in the last 15 years, things have changed dramatically. It's only going to change even worse in that there's so much software out there right now. And that a lot of these smaller companies are corporatizing and having a lot better corporate governance. And so a small GC or a small construction company now is similar in their corporate governance to a large construction company 15 years ago, because they have the new systems in place. So what I'm saying is they now have, in the post-award phase, when you're submitting your changes and submitting for delays, they have a box on their side that this person comply with the contract or not. They submit his notification and then submit his change order, yes or no, on time. No, he didn't, not paid. Full stop. Game over.
It's binary. It's black and white. It's yes, no.
It's binary. So it's not like you're like, oh, I got this great relationship with this guy. Okay, you might have a great relationship. There's nothing he can do. How can he get, like, unless he literally goes around the system to bypass the system and does something he shouldn't be doing?
He's not going to risk his own job.
He can't do it, and he's not going to risk his own job for sure.
Yeah.
So the game of relationships has changed in construction over the last 15 years
because of the software is able to track things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're actually, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're talking about being better and more diligent about tracking change orders and tracking documentation on the job.
What you have to be. You don't have a choice. So the contrast. So this is what we talked about. The title of the show was how to avoid signing risky contracts. So how to avoid signing risky contracts. What we need to do is we need to negotiate. They want you to negotiate. You have to learn how to negotiate your contract. The contract itself is similar to like interpreting engineering drawings, whatever draw or like architect's drawings, whatever it is, you're able to go through those drawings and understand them. Most people can't. You need to spend the time learning how to go through the terms and conditions of the contract to understand how each of those elements affects your risk, affects your bottom line, and affects your cash flow. You can negotiate the certain few. Then we can move to the post-award phase, where cash flow is absolute king. And so, you know, there's a couple of different business models that we always talk about. So GE, General Electric, and Siemens. I'm going to give you the first one before I said that they're the best. I'm going to give you the worst. The worst is an employee, or oftentimes a construction company, right? It is that you will go onto site and you will work for a month for free. Okay? You don't get any money for that. At the end of that month, you will submit your invoice, and then you get paid 30 days later. So from day one of when you start working, when you start spending money, to when you get paid is 60 days, right? Maybe your payment terms are a little bit smaller. Maybe there's 7 or 14, but still you got 30, and then you got
it's all that risk up front before you get any money back.
So that's the worst model. Do stuff first, then get paid later. The best model is get paid first, right? And then get a big chunk of money up front, and then get loads of little payments over time. So Siemens and GE, when they do their turbines and oil and gas, that's why I know that these guys are so good, right? You can have a model like this in any industry, but to build a turbine that goes onto an oil and gas site, you've got to firstly pay upfront for half of the turbine. Okay, so if you think about it from their point of view, to get a big injection of cash flow, and then you pay in milestones as it's complete, and then they give it to you. So you've almost paid for it fully, or just as they deliver, you pay for it fully. And then from their cash flow point of view, they get loads of good cash flow as they go along. And then they've got a maintenance contracts to maintain the thing after, right? And so their lifetime value for the full project is much higher than any other model, right? So we want to move, as we can move from a business model point of view, from the first to the latter, anywhere in between. If we can, the first stage is, how do we start getting prepayments? How do we get a little bit more money up front? And the second thing is cash flow. It's not cash is king, cash flow is king. And that is in your post-award space. The quicker you can get change orders and delays approved, the better your cash flow. Okay, and so important. So the contract itself will say, if there's a change, you have to notify us, and you have to submit a change order within X days. It's an instruction. You have to do it. If you don't do it, they can turn around and say, well, we're not approving that. You didn't comply with the contract. It happens all the time. So you want to be doing that. You want to be doing that with delays, and you want to be doing that with changes. If you do, your cash flow is going to be better. Most construction companies don't die of starvation, lack of work. They die of indigestion.
I was going to say they die of indigestion. Yeah, that's something I learned from Vern Harnish and the Rockefeller habits, and I'm sure it's been said other places. But you die from a lack of systems, a lack of ways of processing the work you've got. And it's all of these simple systems. This is why some contractors are so wealthy. And like, I'm not talking about rich, I mean wealthy. And then others are barely scraping by. It's because of that lack of systems or the indigestion.
Yeah, exactly. And then so what happens is their cash flow gets restricted and restricted and restricted and restricted and smaller, and then they have to get more financing, which costs more money. And then you get into this negative spiral, and all of a sudden you die with a whimper. They don't pay you one final thing, and then that's you out of business. Or they know that you're suffering, and they go, look, your final account is $1 million. We whatever, blah, 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 insert excuse. We're only going to give you 500,000. You need money so badly you can't afford to negotiate. You just have to take the money. That's what happens a lot. Yeah. So that's cash flow is super important in construction.
So, avoiding signing these bad contracts comes down to a lot of things. I mean, first of all, you have to recognize a bad contract when you see it, but you also have to recognize a fixable contract, right? Because I imagine if everybody's sending off a contract in their own favor, they all look, I'll just say the word bad, but then what are some signs that I have a fixable agreement in front of me that there could be some room to move on this?
Well, they're all fixable. It's just the game. Right? The game is you're going to get the worst contract. So it's almost like, You just have to learn not to be annoyed by this. You need to be learn to be like, okay, this is just step one of the process. Step two is I'm going to go back to them with my stuff, and the step three is we're going to meet in the middle, and I'm going to get rid of the few things that are important to me, and maybe we'll keep some of the stuff, and then we'll move forward. That's it. That's as simple as it is.
So I appreciate you saying that. My mind just flipped over to a situation that I see a lot with commercial subtrades, is where they've got a really good relationship with a PM, project manager, and they start getting POs on a job that hasn't been contractually signed. They just you start getting PO. Oh, your face just changed.
Yeah. So there's So firstly, starting on a site with no contract in place is a terrible idea. It is a recipe for disaster.
But Cian, we have a PO. It's just as good. I'm playing the part here, right?
So the PO thing is really funny, right? So if you've got a PO, right, and there's basically the PO is just a piece of paper that says 100 grand or 50 grand, right? Yeah. That's all it is. It's just a piece of paper that says 100 or 50 grand, which means if your proposal, it can be, if your proposal that you put forward has your terms and conditions on it, and then they sent back a PO, then you could argue that it's your terms and conditions that are the terms and conditions, which is a good scenario. But what people don't realize is a PO is a contract. More often than not, they will have their terms and conditions on the PO, or a link to their terms and conditions on the PO that you are agreeing to. Right. And if you check them out, they're probably not good.
Yike. So as soon as I accept that PO, I've accepted the contract, and the contract is in the background lurking, waiting for
exactly. And so you're going to have stuff in there. There's a few key things, right? So there's a limit of liability, which is important.
Is this one of the 4 or 5 things that can really get you? Yeah. One of them's limit of liability. Okay.
So, okay, let me explain, right? So do you understand what liquidated damages is?
I will say no. I don't understand what liquidated damages is.
Okay, so I mean the terminology slightly changes, but if you're late, you're going to have to pay the client back damages for you being late, right? It might be a certain amount per day. Okay, and so that's liquidated damages.
That's the penalty for being late on
the delivery. Penalty for being late. Yep. The next thing is what you have called is consequential damages or loss of profit. Okay, that's your client's loss of profit. So imagine you've engaged me to build a hotel, right? You're the client. I'm building a hotel for you. And as part of building the hotel, I've asked you, I'm late. And as part of being late, I had to give you money back for all the other trades that I've now delayed because I'm late, right? So the cost of construction, you've experienced damages in construction. That's what liquidated damages is. So I owe you that. Consequential damages, which is the real big one, is your loss of profit for not being able to rent out the hotel rooms.
Okay,
so that's different. Now, that particular one is really important because when you're in bed with a bigger company, their loss of profit could be the size of your company.
Yeah.
And so in theory, if you're taking on this risk, you're taking on the risk of losing your company. So that's one of them. Now, the next one is limit of liability. How much liability are you willing to accept? Most contracts or most hostile contracts that you'd be asked to sign are unlimited. They can sue you for whatever amount of money they want, ever, right? What we want to cap it on is the contract value.
Okay.
So then if you go, okay, we're happy to take some liability, but we want to cap it at the contract value. That way, you know that on all your projects, the amount of the maximum amount, and there's a few little carve outs around this, but generally, the maximum I can be sued for is the contract value. And so you're risking a lot less, right?
Again, we're using those same tools for our business, is lower the risk. There's going to be risks in our business, but make them lower wherever we can. So
exactly, because over time, something will happen. You will have a court case or you will have a dispute over a long period of time. It will happen. Now, are you all in, or have you just bet a couple of dollars that you're willing to lose?
Yeah, that's a great way to say it, actually.
Most people are all in. They're all in. They're playing with everything.
Yeah. If I can make it even worse, they're all in on a couple of open contracts right now at any given point in time, because you're not just working for one builder.
Exactly. At any given time, you're risking everything. And so insurance companies would hate that. Any potential investor that you're, or someone you're trying to sell your business to down the line, they see your contracts, they're going to absolutely hate that. And it's just bad business. It's a bad idea. The next one that is really important is termination.
Okay.
So termination is right now in the industry is incredibly important, because GCs are going out of business left, right, and center right now. We can all see it. Of interest rates going up, not delivering on projects. They are essentially a finance company more often than not. GCs, they win a project, they get paid by the owner for delivering that project, but they get a loan from a bank to finance it, and then they give it to all the sub-trades to actually do the work. So it's only to just side note, it's the sub-trades are the only people that actually do any construction work, right? Typically, GCs typically don't. And so they're in trouble, they're gone out of business. And so let's say you're in a situation where you've done the work and they haven't paid you. And if you look in the termination clause of the contract, you can't terminate them. There's a load of ways and they can terminate you. They can terminate you.
I see. So it's a turnaround where I can terminate them.
You can terminate. That's exactly where I was going. So what we want to have is what we call reciprocal termination, which means that I can terminate you and you can terminate me for the same reasons, pretty much. And so what we're talking about in real life is you don't pay me. You have an obligation to pay me. You haven't paid me. Therefore, I'm gone. Poof, gone. I'm out of the contract. You don't want to be in a scenario where you can't go.
And you have to complete.
And you have to keep going. And then all of a sudden you're spending money. It's not coming in. Cash flow becomes an issue, and then trouble. Wow. Because they don't have enough money to pay for it. And you just I know they're going out of business. They haven't paid me. I need to get out of this contract.
But I have to keep working and hope that whoever takes over throws me a couple of bucks.
Yes, that's it. And then are they? Because in the order of precedence, I don't know what is exactly called. There's when someone goes into liquidation, the government get paid any taxes they're owed. Then the banks get paid any money they're owed, and only then do the suppliers get paid.
Yeah.
And even which supplier do they?
I know, which supplier do you pay? Well, they're going to pay based on business case.
They're going to pay, on business case. And then so again, this is another reason for you to be on top of your contract stuff. If you're the company that has complied with everything, you're the squeaky wheel, you're really loud there, and then you've done all your contracts work. When they choose who they're going to pay you, because they go, look, if he takes us to court, he has everything in place. Whereas if you don't do that and you're the guy that has, it's a relationship guy, they're not going to pay you. Yeah. It's just because you've got nothing in place. They can say you've not complied with the contract, so we're not paying you.
My goodness. Okay, so we got two places where you can really get hammered: limit of liability and termination, which should be reciprocal termination.
Yeah.
Is there a third?
First of all, there's consequential damages. We don't agree to consequential damages,
right.
Loss of profit. Next one is we don't want to agree to unlimited liability. We want to cap our liability. Termination clause is one. And now the next one that we have at the moment is escalation, or rise and fall. It can often be called. And this is seasonal a little bit, right? In that it's typically it's about increasing your rates, and it depends on the trade you're in. But it give you an example of it going pretty badly is if you're in this steel trade of any kind.
Sure.
In 2020, 2021, the price of steel went up by 60%. So if you've got a company that can absorb a margin of an increase in price of 60%, good on you. I want to be in business with you. But most people can't. And so if you're locked into a contract with someone and your cost of raw materials goes up by 60%, you're in trouble, big time. And so we need to have a little clause in the contract where we can escalate the rates in times where these things happen. That's really important, particularly in this last couple of years where rates have gone pretty crazy. And it depends on how long your contract is and if you're willing to take it. If we're talking, a couple of weeks contract, not that risky. We're talking 6 months, starting to get a bit more risky. We're talking a year, definitely risky. We're talking a multi-year deal. You need to get that sorted.
We saw that in a lot of industries when we had supply chain problems, and then we had material escalation, material substitution clauses, and also people getting caught. Not everybody's buying steel; they might just be buying ply or a 2x4. Like, what happened to 2x4s? And plywood's now $90 a sheet. And I don't think it's really come down. It's a wacky world, but if you're tied into that agreement, I can see your point. You'd really be hard pressed to complete the contract, and then now they're going to come after you for not completing it.
Yep, exactly. And so there's lots of stuff. There's your payment terms. There is your security. When you get your security back, how can we get it back quicker? It's everything you're trying to do is trying to get yourself in a situation where your cash flow is going to be better, your risk is going to be lower, which is going to allow you to be more successful financially on the construction project, which is going to make your margin better.
I have a feeling we just unlocked one little tiny box in the corner of your mind. There's so much more. There's so much more here. I've
dealt with quite a lot and seen a lot of bad things happen, a lot of good things happen, and I've seen the best companies, the best and biggest companies, what they do from contracting point of view, and they are pretty sophisticated. It is there's an old CEO friend of mine. He was an Irish guy, and this particular company was an electrical engineering company, and they're in the US, huge, like they're a massive company, but they specialize in oil and gas. This is actually, they were bought recently by a Canadian company, so from your neck of the woods. And so he openly said that his model is, I will win a project at a discount, right, to get the project, knowing that we have the contractual skill to make the margin back in the post-award phase via change orders and delays.
Yeah.
I just need to get my foot in the door.
It's so funny. He's not the only one. There are other guys that know how to do that. They manage their change orders per X, whatever X.
Exactly.
They know if they do, let's just use $1 million for an easy number. If they know that on any given $1 million contract, change orders are going to be, I'll just say 200,000. It doesn't matter what the number is. They know their change orders per X is 200,000 divided by $1 million, and they can do the math backwards. And for every $1 million in contract value, they're going to get 200 in change orders. Is that livable for them or not? And that's a number. That's something we track for people in their dashboard in coaching, because you have to know it. But it's interesting. We just keep hearing it. These are the cracks in the darkness that appear, and people ignore them. They ignore those little tips. And then you and I are saying, hey, maybe pay attention to that one there. That one's got some value attached to it.
True, absolutely. And then if you I always try and refer to the biggest companies in your space, right? So if you're a sub trade, and you look at, there's some sub trades, and we looked at, we've got we've worked with over 250 construction companies. We've done over 4,000 negotiations. I don't know how many change orders we've done, but as part of that, we've got so much data. And so when we look at the most successful construction companies, and this obviously, there's two things that make them successful. And one is how long they've been in business, right? So if we just do a correlation, the guys that are bigger have been in business longer. Okay. Second one is they tend to be family-run businesses. So we just diagnose both of those things, right? If we're optimizing to stay in business longer, we got to be choosy about the contracts that we put in place. So there are sub-trades, subcontractors that have been in business 18 years. How are they doing it?
Yeah.
How are they not going out of business? Because they'll have gone through disputes. So think about that. So obviously their risk profile is lower. They're employing Warren Buffett philosophy. I'm happy to take a modest win with low risk rather than take a huge win with huge risk over a long period of time. That's how you grow. And then the reputation obviously comes, reputation of being good and having decent margin, so you can actually pay for good people and do a good service. That obviously helps as well. The other side of it was, sorry, my brain has slowed down there in the last little bit. So we said, oh yeah, sorry, the family-run business and staying in business. So the family-run businesses, why is it family-run businesses tend to be better? Is because they often again make decisions for the long term. They don't take short-term decisions. They don't make decisions looking at the next project, the next project. They make decisions based on next year, 5 years, handing it down to my son, my daughter, whatever it happens to be. And so when you're looking at your business from that, risk again starts to become higher on your list of priorities than it is. Smaller companies have risk right down here. It's a risky game. I'm happy to risk stuff because that's how you win in this game. Maybe to get started, but when you're trying to grow from a small business into a big business, you can't play that game anymore.
Yeah, there's the ability or the willingness to say no, or not take these contracts if it's not negotiable. To go back to one of the questions here, how do you find out which one to chase? And I suppose some of them you'll know once you start to take first steps with whoever you're negotiating with on the other side. If they stop the negotiation, that's an indication that's not the one to continue with, even if you need the work.
Exactly. You get information when you try and negotiate with people. You get information from them, and if they're saying something along the lines of, "No, we're not willing to negotiate," and you're like, "You're not willing to negotiate on this particular clause," and they're like, "Yeah, no, we're not. We just know." And then you're like, "Oh, right. Well, when I'm looking to get a change order approved in the post-award phase, that leads me to believe that you're not going to approve it, and I'm going to lose money."
Yeah, and it's a change order to your benefit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
that's what it is. Yeah.
Yep.
Cian, this has been fantastic. Really eye-opening. Really eye-opening. If somebody wants to find you in this wide world, find out more about you, find out more about what you guys do, how do we do that?
So the way I look at this is there's a lot of complex stuff in there, right? And that isn't super complex. Once you learn it once, you can do it, right? So what the best thing that you guys can do if you're listening and you want to get this sorted in your business is, one, if you just search Cian, Cian Brennan on YouTube or on Spotify or on iTunes or even in just Google, you are going to find our podcast. And the podcast runs through all of this stuff, right? And on YouTube, there's actually a playlist on how to negotiate your construction contracts. Everything you need is in there. Absolutely everything. It's all in there. It's all broken down. There's 16 videos. There's loads of content. So it's all there, absolutely free for you to just go and do your own thing, right? The second thing you can do is, and I'm just trying to help your audience as much as possible, you can go to a lawyer with your worst contract and say, "Hey, can you do me up a set of commercial principles?" And he's like, "What's that mean?" You go, "Right, all I want you to do is go through this contract, and I want you to go through every single clause, and let's prepare a document of where my company stands on this type of clause." Then you can use that document that you can submit with your proposals to say, "My bid is based on the acceptance of this secondary document, which says where I stand on all of these clauses," which gives you good leg up to be able to start negotiating. And if all that is too much work for you, you just want us to do it, Quantum to do it for you, you just go to quantumcontractsolutions.com and we'll help you out if we can.
Yeah. Well, there's some people out there right now, it's hard to find good people, and yet we want to grow. And so obviously, you know that sometimes you need a contractor, you need somebody temporarily in place until you fill that role yourself to do that. So
yeah, absolutely.
You occupy an interesting space in the world.
It's a strange space. I get it. It's a strange space, but it's a space that every construction company needs to have sorted one way or the other, where you hire internally a lawyer or you hire a contracts expert to do it, or you outsource or you do it yourself. It just needs to be tackled.
Yeah. Well, Cian, this is fantastic. I appreciate having you on the show. We'll probably have you back again if you're available to talk about this from another angle. And people listening, look, if there's something you want to ask, funnel the question through me. Obviously, you can go straight to Cian, but if you wanted us to do another episode, let us know. We'll arrange it and get a little deeper on another topic.
Sounds good, Dominic.
All right. Thanks, Cian. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well. What did you learn from Cian? And what can you put in place? For instance, did you know you can redline a contract and send it back? You don't have to take the paperwork that they gave you. There's money in those clauses and there's risk in those clauses. So if you do commercial construction and contracting work, I hope you listen to some of the tips that Cian shared with us today. I'm going to break this part of the episode into 3 equal parts. We're going to start off with the dad jokes, as you know. I'm going to ask you a favor, as you know, and then we're going to identify a common problem for contractors and business owners. And today, that common problem is how to price with confidence, how to price with profit margins in it, how to price making sure you've covered everything. And so when you give that bid, when you give that proposal, it's with confidence. Then I'm going to simplify it and I'm going to give you steps on how to fix the pricing confidence issue. So let's start off with a quick dad joke to get your mind open to the opportunities that the world provides, because this world is full of opportunities. There simply has never been a better time to be in business than right now. The economy is great. People have access to money. People have less time than ever before, and they don't even own a ladder. They don't own a hammer. They don't own wrenches, but they want stuff. And the time they do have, they want to spend doing things that does nothing to do with taking care of their home. People that are moving into new offices or building restaurants, they have the same need. They want to have beautiful stuff built to take care of their customers, who are the same people on the residential side who don't want to cook at home. See how this is working? Never been a better time to be in business than today. In the last 2,000 some odd years, you are living in the golden age right now. Anyways, I want you to be open to that. So here's a couple of dad jokes just to bring you back to reality. Let's start with a knock knock joke. Knock knock. Now, along with me, you got to say who's there. So knock knock. Mustache. Mustache who? I must ask you a question, but I'll shave it for later. I felt that needed to be done with an accent. So feel free when you're telling that to your kids or your nieces and nephews that you do the same thing. My wife just informed me that she found a contract that we had gotten a long time ago, and it was a contract just for her, but we got it a long time ago. It's a contract for her to give lectures. It's called a marriage license. Yeah. So speaking of those contracts and licenses, do you know why the Grinch is seeking out a contract lawyer? Yeah, well, he wants to get rid of the Santa Clauses. Oh, the groaners. Guys, you see what I've done now? I've got your mind open. This is the part of the show where I ask you a favor, and the favor is this. I want you to leave a review for the podcast. Or if you're on YouTube, you can just leave a thumbs up on the YouTube video that goes along with this. And the reason is, you might think, well, Dom just wants this for himself. Yeah. I put together a fantastic episode. I think you should give it a thumbs up. But if you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. Leave some sort of review. And the reason that that's important actually has nothing to do with me. It's about giving it forward, leaving a trust breadcrumb, letting other people know that you've been here, that you found it safe, that you found some value, that you took away a nugget of wisdom, that Cian was a great guest, and that you thought, okay, yeah, that was worth a review. That was worth me saying, I listened to this podcast and I thought it was worth my time, because there's somebody out there who's going to come along next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and be looking for the same information on how not to get caught in a contract situation in commercial construction. And they're going to be looking for an answer, and they're going to find that episode. And they may not click if they don't see that it was a well-reviewed episode or that this show wasn't well-reviewed. So that's where I'm coming from. So folks, that would be my ask of you. I hope that's pretty clear and straightforward. And so I'm looking forward to your review, and I thank you in advance for it. All right, let's go to the next part here. The next part is we're going to solve a common business problem. And the common business problem is I cannot and I have not been able to find a way to estimate jobs with confidence. So that's one of the problems that I have a solution for. The other one that I have a solution for is you're sending your team out on go-backs, to complete a punch list or do a customer service call. And you're doing it because you're exactly like everybody else who listens to this podcast. You stand by your word, you do good work. And if it's not the work that you expect, you'll do whatever it takes to take care of that. But you're not sure what the cost is of that. If you want to know what it costs to put one man in one van for 1 hour, that will change how you answer things when a customer calls, but it'll also change what you do in advance to make sure we don't get those calls, so that when a job is done, it's done, right? So this is going to solve 2 problems. You have to have a pricing model that you can enter into with absolute confidence. Now, this particular model here, I've used with lots of home renovators, with commercial contractors, with people that are doing kitchen and bath renovations, with people that are making kitchen cabinets, with people that are doing roofing, people that are doing HVAC, people with high call volumes. So like locksmiths and things like that. The model works, but you've got to enter your numbers in there. You see, there's a couple of things that we forget as business owners. We forget that things evolve in our business and they change. And those little changes lead to profit leaks, which we've talked about many times in other episodes. But there are 10 places in your business, 10 little numbers that you need to go find. And when you put those numbers on a piece of paper, or in this case, inside this very simple Excel spreadsheet, which I can send you if you want it, just text me. The keyword for this is go back. Even though we use it for two different things, the keyword is go back. And the text number or the cell number to text me, just text me on my cell, 315-903-7853. And just say, Dom, can I get the go back report? And then you know what I'll do? I'll send you the go back report. But the key to this thing is once you know those 10 numbers and you line them up on the Excel spreadsheet, which in this case is column C, you put the numbers in column C, bonk, 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 bonk. The last box, column or row 11, just pops out. The answer pops out. And that answer is your company's answer to how much you need to charge per hour. I got to tell you, you're going to be surprised at the number. Now, a couple of times I've had people look at the number with me and go, we already charge more than that. We must be doing a great job. And I say, yes, you are. If we've done the math and we've checked our work and we've proven that we're good at that number, now we know that we're good with that number. And those owners now estimate with confidence. They know that the jobs they're estimating, they're doing a good job on, and we can continue to march forward and take care of other things in the business, right? Because as you know, and Paul Akers, the author of 2 Second Lean, reminds us that once you take care of one bottleneck, another one will appear. Once you take care of one bottleneck in your business, another bottleneck will appear. And maybe the job description for people like you and I as business owners is I hunt bottlenecks and I slay them and then I barbecue them on an open fire. I love bottlenecks. Find me a good bottleneck and I'll deal with it. But know that as soon as you've dealt with one, the next one's coming, right? Now, on the go back side, you need that same information. You need that same information to be able to talk to your production manager, your general manager, your foreman, your project manager, your estimator, and say, this is what it costs us in real dollars to put one man in one van for 1 hour when we make a mistake, when we forget to do something on a job. And you start to soon realize that it's better to arrange your simple systems in your business to make sure that the customer is totally happy before you leave a job site. And you don't have any, there's no reason to go back. But if you do have to go back, there's a cost associated with that. And you could prove that to yourself and the people in your company and say, look, doing jobs right the first time has a value to us. We don't want to take shortcuts. And so boom, 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 you enter in all these pieces of info. By the way, the info is easy to find. It's info you might even know off the top of your head. But what's interesting here is that the worksheet, it's called the Go Back Report. The worksheet shows you what order to think about it in. So you build it logically in your business, right? And again, just text me. You guys know the number. Say it with me, 315-903-7853. Just text me there and I'll send you off the Go Back Report. So a couple of things that it asks. Here's a tough question. How many full-time people do you have? That's like row A. This does not sound overcomplicated, right? There's a little definition there that says, what does full-time mean? And how do you count part-time people or half-time people, right? Then you do a calculation of your billable hours. This is where things start to get interesting because you think somebody works for you approximately 2,000 hours a year. But I've already made a mistake in saying 2,000 because if you do the math, it's about 2,020. But if you do the real math on how many actual billable hours somebody has, it's much less than that. And there's a description here about all the places money is dripping away. It's being hacked at. It's being cut. Yes, we need to have team meetings, but that's not a billable hour. Yes, we need to do prep, but that's not a billable hour. Yes, we need to do this and that, but that's not a billable hour. And you start to see the world in a very different way just by asking slightly different questions. That's what I want to get you to. Anyways, I won't go through each of the boxes. Send me a text if you want the Go Back Report. It's how much it costs you for 1 hour in the business. And those of you who already work with me or with one of the other coaches like Coach Lee or anybody else, you'll have heard us say this. What does it cost on January 1st to flick on the lights in the very first hour that your shop is open or that your job site is open? There's a cost, right? When we match that up against our revenue responsibility per hour, there's a cost that we have to go contain. We have to get that money back. And so running our business costs us money. We actually rent our business to other people for a profit to solve their problems. And you see how this whole thing works together. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. You know how to get the report. It's called the Go Back Report. Just text me the word go back and say, Dom, can I get the Go Back Report? And we'll send it off to you. Now, the second thing I want to remind you of is that we run a masterclass. It's a training class. It's 1 hour. And it's called the Time, Team, and Money Secrets Masterclass. I'd love to have you on there. First, because I'd finally get a chance to be on a conference call with you, and maybe we can interact a little bit more than we do here on the podcast. But if you want to be on the masterclass, in 1 hour, you're going to learn the same as reading 100 books, because I'm going to condense everything down into an hour. There's lots of visuals. So you're going to want to have your phone with you to take pictures or take notes in a notebook. You want to be somewhere quiet and confidential so you can concentrate and nobody's bugging you. But we're going to be talking very strictly about business owner type things. So make sure you are in a confidential space. You know, you don't want to have it on speakerphone in the lunchroom, right? Sit in your truck, go to your office, work from home that day. The call is just an hour, but it's going to be a ton of value. Anyways, to get on that, just say that you want to be on the wait list. Actually use the keyword wait list. Say, Dom, wait list. And again, same cell phone number. Just keep things simple. 315-903-7853. And that'll get you on the wait list. And then when we run the next masterclass, we'll send you an email, let you know, and then you can join us as you see fit. All right. We're wrapping up right there, folks. Listen, one more thing. I would be very proud to one day be your business coach. Myself and my team are ready when you're ready. And so reach out to us when you want to have that conversation about getting your business to the next level, and we'll talk about it. All right. Have a great day, folks. Maybe one day during that conversation, we'll be having a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, and look forward to that. Talk to you soon.